This is gonna shock some of you, but here it is. There are some people who don't believe there are black people in Iowa.
I was born and raised here in Sioux City.
Well, I'm born and raised here in Waterloo.
Okay, my name is Jalisha Johnson. I'm from Des Moines.
My name is Nia Wilder, and I am a proud product of Waterloo, Iowa.
My mother had to go to Wisconsin over the bridge for us to be born. But we lived here in Iowa.
You get the idea. Hi, my name is Ty Russian. I'm one of the more than 130,000 black people who call Iowa home. About a decade ago, I moved from Kansas City to Iowa to start my career as a journalist. Since then, I've learned there's a rich history of black activism and trailblazers all across this great state. We saw that in action when so many people took to the streets to speak out against hate after George Floyd's murder. I even spoke at rallies around me in Northwest Iowa in two towns that happen to be some of the whitest, most conservative communities in the state.
The system needs to change. We need reform, we need accountability, and most of all, black and brown people need true allies to help put a stop to racism, racial profiling, and police brutality. It's a tall order to fix all of that, and I don't know how we can. However, today, and the movements across the country leading up to this, those were a good start. Black people aren't asking for special treatment. On the contrary, we want the same thing we always wanted, true equality.
While 2020 was a battle cry, the fight against racism is far from over, and finding a solution to such an insidious issue is hard. The onus of solving racism shouldn't fall just to black people, but we still take on the cause, including here in Iowa. So join me as I travel across the Hawkeye State to talk to black activists, community leaders, and elected officials to highlight their work and to see if we can answer this question. How do we end racism?
You know, being born black kind of radicalizes you in a sense, like you're kind of born radicalized.
You know, somebody's got to open the door.
But it also creates so many opportunities for those.
I grew up hunting and fishing and
Funding for this program was provided by Friends, the Iowa PBS Foundation, as well as generations of families and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa PBS.
Iowa really has a mixed history, of course, relative to equality for blacks.
Meet Leo Landis. He's the state curator for the State Historical Society of Iowa. He helped provide some historical context around black and white relations in Iowa as we started to work on this project. Leo also shared some of Iowa's incredible black history with us.
For those of us who, come out of a background as being, white European ancestry, we learned history one way, and you could say, well, there's not enough time for those other stories. Well, those are important stories, and to truly understand the mosaic of American history, and it's not being critical of our country, it's just understanding the richness of these stories. It may make you uncomfortable, but if you really want to understand the United States and the state of Iowa, you need to understand the adversity other people have faced. And to understand that, you need to study those wide-ranging stories.
One of those stories worth studying is that of Des Moines native Jalisha Johnson.
There's always something better waiting if I fight for it.
An organizer with the Des Moines Black Liberation Movement, Jalisha was 16 when she organized her first protest in 2016 in response to Donald Trump's election during her junior year of high school. It drew hundreds of kids across the Des Moines metro.
But it was really beautiful, and I think it showed me that my voice has value, and it showed me that there are lots of people who are behind me, who look like me and live like me, who believe in the same things that I believe in.
The Des Moines Black Liberation Movement formed organically after several large protests in Iowa's capital and largest city following the murder of George Floyd. Jalisha has been there since day one and has helped the organization flourish. Its primary goal is true freedom for black people.
So our organization is broken up into departments. So at first we kind of operated in a big group. And this is when there were 13 of us organizers in our collective. And so it was really very much too many cooks in the kitchen. So, and then also we officially became a 501c3 and 501c4. So we also had to make sure we had our stuff, all our ducks in a row.
Jalisha works as a teaching artist with Say Poetry Des Moines, where she helps young people find their voice and shows them how to utilize it. She doesn't take her position lightly.
When you're someone's teacher, it pushes you to stay a student. It makes me really understand like how much power and influence I have over people, and that makes me like really want to be super transparent, super authentic.
Her own voice was on display during countless protests in 2020. In fact, Jalisha was banned from the Iowa Capitol complex because of her protesting. She was eventually awarded a settlement from the Iowa State Patrol after a successful ACLU-backed lawsuit overturned her ban. Jalisha also helped push for more representation and change within BLM, addressing internalized instances of colorism, fatphobia, and homophobia.
I want to make this city safer than it was for me growing up, and I think that like every year I'm learning that I can, and every year, at least I feel like, I hope I'm doing things that are making it safer, and that makes me feel really good, and it makes me really grateful that I didn't give up, and it literally like keeps me inspired.
Yo, what up, y'all? Well, yeah, thanks for coming out.
Jalen Coleman is another organizer with the Des Moines Black Liberation Movement and a spring 2022 candidate for the Iowa House.
Me and a few other folks were standing right here in this same spot behind the barricade, watching a bunch of Des Moines Police Department officers clean up blood in the street right there.
For Jalen, taking on the fight against racism is a natural extension of who he is.
Like, I think, being born Black kind of radicalizes you in a sense. Like, you're kind of born radicalized. I've always been a very, very vocal person. I've always been one to speak my mind and let my opinions be known. Haven't been one to really hold back. Definitely got me in trouble a lot in school.
Jalen grew up in the Kansas City suburbs, but his parents are from Iowa. He's always had a connection to the Hawkeye State and is going back and forth his whole life. Jalen moved to Iowa full-time after graduating from college to work on a U.S. Senate campaign, but changed course after George Floyd's murder and went all in on organizing.
Ever since then, I've been organizing alongside those folks. I'm the advocacy director of the organization, so a lot of the politics stuff, the lobbying, the stuff that happens at Des Moines City Council or at the Iowa State Legislature, that's kind of the wheelhouse I'm in. So organizing around policy and trying to put some action on some of these elected officials to actually make a change here in the city and the state.
Jalen's become probably one of Iowa's most outspoken voices on white supremacy, racism, and police violence, all of which has placed him in a lot of crosshairs.
Why is she being detained? What are her charges? Why is she being detained? Back up or go to jail. What are her charges? Why is she being detained? Get your hands off me. Back up. Back up or you're going to jail. Shut the f up and get your hands off me. Bro, what the hell? I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything, bro.
Since 2020, Jalen's been arrested once, charged multiple times, and has had 2 trials, all related to protesting.
So, did I expect to become a target? I mean, kind of, but not I guess not to the extent that I feel like I have become a target to law enforcement. Obviously I 100% understood the risk from day one going out to protest.
Jalen says he's been exposed to chemical irritants, handcuffed and held in the back of a police car in the summer with the windows rolled up without the benefit of air conditioning, hit by a car carrying Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds. The circumstances of how this happened are disputed by the Iowa State Patrol. Jalen also says he's had anonymous threats mailed to his parents' home in Kansas and endured much more, all in the name of Black liberation.
So I always understood the risks that came with protesting, knowing that you can be arrested, knowing that you can be seriously injured by police or worse. I wouldn't say it's deterred me.
While the liberation movement's protests garner the most attention, the organization also does a lot of mutual aid work. BLM either oversees or works directly with organizations that provide rent relief, bail for arrested protesters, community fridges, abortion access, support for the trans community, and more.
Our bread and butter, our thing that we really are about is direct action protesting. And then on the other side is mutual aid. and building up a strong community. You know, we are abolitionists. You know, we believe in defunding the police. We believe in a future that doesn't need police. But we know that for that to actually, you know, come to fruition, we have to build up a community that is able to thrive and help each other out without the need for police.
Actions by some police officers aren't the only problem when it comes to race and racism in Iowa, but negative experiences with law enforcement came up a few times during our travels across the state. In Waterloo, Iowa's blackest city per capita, Nia Wilder took a different approach to the issues between black residents and police by working with law enforcement to try and improve relations.
Law enforcement isn't going anywhere, and as much as everyone wants to defund them, some places it happens and it doesn't always have a good turn. Some places it happens and it does have a good turn. But here, some of our officers really do want to make a change, and they really do care about Waterloo. I feel like they deserve a chance and the opportunity to make a difference in the community, and if there are bad apples, they need to go.
Nia Wilder is about as Waterloo as they come. She's an entrepreneur, photographer, mentor, public speaker, and community activist. When we met her, she was running to become Waterloo's first openly gay city council member. Nia helped lead Black Lives Matter marches in Waterloo and other Black Hawk County communities.
Anywhere we had to go to protest, to make sure the community knew that Black Lives Matter, we were there. We walked with the police. I even talked to a couple of officers during that time, and I told them, you should know why we're here, and if you support us, then you should be on one knee with us. And they took a knee with us. I respect that because they could have just stood there like we were just ants. But instead, they took a knee with us.
I'm just gonna go to real. Nia took some criticism for working with the police.
I had got called an Uncle Tom, I got called a coon, I got called all type of things, and I couldn't understand why anyone would be upset about me sitting next to someone that we have an issue with and figuring out how we can mend it.
One of the outcomes from BLM protests in Waterloo was a final push in a long-standing fight by Black Waterloo residents to change the logo for the Waterloo Police Department. The logo was implemented in 1964, and some Black residents have had issues with it since day one.
In the city of Waterloo, we had a logo, and it was a griffin. It was a red mystical creature with green eyes. I had been told the creator of the logo and whomever is in that circle nicknamed it the green-eyed nigger eater. And so when I heard that, I was immediately turned off. I was like, yeah, we gotta get this changed. And if you are someone in the community and you're not Black and you hear that, you should be offended. And I didn't understand why the community wasn't offended by that. Yeah, make that history. This is crazy. Like, my name is legitly on the ballot.
The logo was changed, but not without a contentious political fight that actually ended up backfiring on the group that politicized the issue. Every candidate supported by the PAC, which wanted to keep the original logo, wound up losing in November. Nia's election was part of a larger victory that led to Waterloo having its first ever minority majority council. Historic as it may be, Nia still isn't done doing her part to make Waterloo a better place for all.
I am on this fight for the generation to come after me. I have a stepson, I have a little brother, I have little cousins, I have people that need Waterloo to be at its best, and I wouldn't feel right leaving it to them in the condition that it's in now.
Look, we gotta get this on camera. We gotta feed your camera.
Another Waterloo resident trying to make the world better is Ross Smith. Ross is a state legislator and former gubernatorial candidate. Outside of politics, a bulk of his professional life has been dedicated to working with youth, including teaching a class on how to survive a police encounter. A married father of two, Ross is also an organic farmer and the son of a mother who is a pastor and a father who is a card-carrying union member and retired John Deere worker.
My experience growing up in Waterloo was unique because I grew up hunting and fishing and outdoors, but lived in an almost exclusively Black community.
Ross said his unique background has allowed him to connect with Iowans from all walks of life, from urban to rural, which he noted is just another word for country. Still, he's always keenly aware of his race and the additional obstacles that come with it.
The one thing that you can't out-status, no matter how much money you make, no matter if you become the president of the United States, you're still black. But at the same time, it's still one of those things that for me, I'm aware. And maybe being an Iowan makes me more aware. Maybe being an Iowan who loves to hunt and fish makes me extremely aware. Because I have to be mindful, right? I have to be mindful of the fact that there's times I'm by myself in the middle of nowhere carrying a gun, right, over my shoulder with my dog. And that can be a threat to some people sometimes. Audit through IJAC. Fighting that IJAC still gets the funding that.
Like most black men, he has a police encounter story. He was leaving a campaign event at a downtown Waterloo church while wearing khakis and a shirt with his name on it as he headed to his wife's car. Waterloo police were looking for a suspect and they surrounded him. He called his wife on the car's Bluetooth so she could hear everything that was going on as he was questioned by officers, some of whom recognized him as their state representative. Ross had to put the skills he once taught young men on how to survive a police encounter to practical use.
I started having to go through that process myself. Comply, even if I know I don't have to, comply. Because to not comply, it could mean life or death, right? Suck it up. Yeah, they're searching my food, searching my car, right? Going through my container of rice pilaf, asking me for more than one form of ID. All the things that I know I don't have to legally apply with or comply with, but I do because I want to get home to see my wife and my daughter.
Ross has tried to use his legislative position to make a difference.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Kaufman, a friend. We chatted on Monday about how important this legislation was to us and that we would run through any wall we had to make sure it got here. And here we are today, so I appreciate your commitment to doing that.
In 2020, he authored the A More Perfect Union Bill, which banned law enforcement from using chokeholds and lenses to prevent deadly force, allows the Iowa Attorney General's office to prosecute officers whose actions result in death, prohibits law enforcement officers fired for serious misconduct from being rehired, and strengthened the requirement for anti-bias and de-escalation training for officers. Ross, a Democrat, managed to pull that off in the fourth year of a Republican trifecta in the State House. A photo of him looking exhausted after the House approved the bill went viral.
To craft that bill, to have Democrats, Republicans, Black Lives Matter, law enforcement, give insight, be a part of that process, to me, was something that I don't know if we'll see again. We had 2 weeks. We had 2 weeks in a special session to get something done. It took all that I had. I think it took all that the Black Caucus had to get to that point. But we got it passed, and the governor signed it. We passed it with 150-0.
Whenever there's been social change in Sioux City over the last 50 or so years, you're more than likely going to find a connection to the Lee family. Flora, her late husband Rudy, and their daughter Trayla have often been the first Black, insert whatever title, position, label you want in Sioux City. Their range of firsts include Rudy being the city's first Black firefighter, to Flora being the first Black woman elected to the school board, to Trayla being the first Black drum major at West High School.
But I get tired of being the first, but somebody's got to open the door, because I'm hoping that when I open the door and I'm the first, I won't be the last, because you don't want to be the last.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's key. Like, in being the first, it brings on so many nuances, but it also creates so many opportunities for those that may not have ever thought that they could walk that path.
And you learn a lot by being the first.
The family has always been involved in the community, something Flora is adamant about. They served on boards and committees for dozens of organizations, and Flora even co-founded the Siouxland Human Investment Partnership nonprofit.
It's better to be at the table, because if you're not at the table, you are on the menu. And you need to be at the table so that you can provide your input and your ideas in order to impact the entire project or committee that you're serving on.
Dubuque is Iowa's oldest city and considered by many as one of its most beautiful, but it also has a history of extreme racism.
There's 150 homes here in Dubuque that the abstracts in the house say The house will not be sold to anyone of Negro or Mongolian descent for the next 50 years. This house had that abstract. I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
This is Lynn Sutton, a second-generation civil rights activist standing in front of her childhood home and talking about her hometown of Dubuque. Here's how her late mother, Ruby, described the city.
She always said, this isn't down south, this is up south. They just don't have the signs up.
There was a cross burning as recent as the 1990s and a major KKK rally in the 1980s. All 8 Sutton children were raised in Dubuque, but were born out of state, although there are 2 hospitals in the city.
You were black, we had to go across the river.
To give additional context, Lynn is 58 and her youngest sibling is 53.
It's crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Not as long as you think.
Couldn't even.
And it was after the civil rights movement at that.
A lot of Lynn's recent activism has centered on addressing housing inequalities in her hometown, which negatively affect residents of color and/or people with lower incomes. Some of the rental properties Lynn and her allies have inspected are beyond repair. They've also run across mold, faulty plumbing, bug or rodent infestations, and other issues. Were there some more houses in this neighborhood that you've checked?
Probably the majority of them down this way we filled out inspection reports on. And so they were really taking advantage of them. Because sometimes some of them didn't have anywhere else to go because maybe they didn't have the best rental history or had a criminal background that was sometimes held against them. But once again, they were taking advantage of it.
A 2018 class action lawsuit she helped spearhead forced some negligent landlords to make improvements to their properties, give their tenants lawful leases, and pay their tenants restitution.
In results to that, it has made other landlords like, oh, I better fix this up before they call them because then I'm gonna be in trouble. But it shouldn't have ever gotten to that point.
These Black Iowans are working to make their communities and the state better, but it's time we ask the thesis of this film. How do we end racism? How do we end racism?
Woo! Oh, woo! You just said the $1 million question. One person at a time, one group at a time. And we have to see each other as human first.
Raw, open, honest communication, not sugarcoating anything. If it gets a little tense, then fine. But after this, we need to leave with a better understanding of each other. And if you still have racism on your mind, then we're gonna do a crash course. We're gonna keep it going.
I don't think we need to end racism because I think it's how we learn, it's how we grow, and I think we have to continuously educate people on ignorance as it relates to culture, ethnicity, and just our differences.
A big part of it is changing the culture, just our culture in general. I feel like a lot of it has to do with capitalism. I think that capitalism breeds racism.
I think that in order to end racism and all the isms, we have to end capitalism. I think that when we understand that the commodification of Black people and Black labor and Black bodies literally came from greed and came from a desire for capital. That's literally the reason racism exists.
We as Black folks need to do is stop waiting for white folks to change. And we've got to stop being afraid of that. And we've got to join with our allies and our other brothers and sisters of color so that we can move forward.
Because I don't know how we do away with something that's so part of the fabric of our society, of our state. I don't know how we do away with something that's like breathing to people in this country. I don't know how you do away with something that a large part of our population can't even acknowledge exists. I know it's here, right? But as I said earlier, if fish don't see water, right? Can't tell them that they're drowning. Can't tell them that I'm drowning, because they don't see that. And so I don't know how we end racism. I don't know if we can end racism. My focus right now is reducing the impacts of racism on my ability to live every day.
Funding for this program was provided by Friends, the Iowa PBS Foundation, as well as generations of families and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa PBS.